All right. Shalom, family. It's your brother Kanaiba coming at you once again with this video titled The Apostle Paul. What was his job? Okay. So in this particular video, of course, I want to talk about the Apostle Paul a little bit. Okay. Because there's a bit of controversy about what he was exactly sent to do, or rather, who he was sent for. Okay. Now, of course, us of the Hebrew Israelite faith, most of us believe that Paul was sent to the Gentiles, aka basically Israelite foreigners. Okay. That's basically who Paul was sent to. Those Gentiles were indeed Israelites. Okay, which we're going to get into in this particular video. Okay, but of course in Christianity, let them tell it that those Gentiles were non-Jews or non-Israelites, and that's just simply not the case. That's not the truth. Okay, but we're going to get into that a little bit in this particular video. Okay, so what I want to do, we're gonna start out with a little bit of history about Paul. Okay, when he was basically first called by Yahawashi on his road to Damascus. Okay, that's where I want to start. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into the scriptures. Okay, so starting off, we're going to go to the book of Acts, chapter 9, and we're going to start at the top. Okay, we're going to start at verse 1, and it reads, it says, and Saul. Now, for those of you who may not know, this is Paul before his conversion. Okay, before his conversion, he was known as Saul. Okay, so it says, and Saul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord. So before his conversion, Paul was actually persecuting the followers of Yahawashi, the actual Christians. Okay, not to be confused with the Christians today colloquially. Okay, those are not real Christians. Okay, the real Christians were the Jews that followed Yahawashi that you're reading about right here. Okay, according to the scriptures, right? So it says, went unto the high priest. So Saul, he went to the high priest to basically request something, okay, which we're about to read about in the next verse, okay? So this is verse 2, and it reads, it says, and desired of him letters to Damascus to the synagogues. So basically, Saul, which is Paul, he basically requested for letters to be sent out to the leadership of the synagogues in Damascus for a specific purpose, which we're about to read about. Okay, and it reads, it says that if he found any of this way, now any of this way meaning disciples of the Lord, okay, followers of Yahawashi. It says that if he found any of this way, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. Okay, they would be imprisoned for actually following Yahawashi and ultimately put to death. That's what was going on during that time. Okay, this is what Paul was doing before he was Paul. Okay, while he was Saul at the time, before his conversion. Okay, you have to understand what was going on. This is the history of what was going on with the Apostle Paul, okay, before his conversion. Okay, so now let's go to the next verse. All right, so now moving forward, this is verse 3, and it reads, it says, and as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined round about him a light from heaven. Okay, so now this light shined upon him from heaven. Okay, you got to understand too, there were two other men that were with him, okay, which we're going to get into when we read further, okay? So this is verse 4, and it reads, it says, and he fell to the earth and heard a voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? Okay, now let's not leave the suspense here. Okay, this is Yahushua speaking to the Apostle Paul. Okay, and Yahushua asked Paul basically a rhetorical question. He said, why persecutest thou me? Now, in the verses above we read, it was actually his followers that Saul was persecuting. But here you see Yahushua asking him, why persecutest thou me? Okay, now why is that? Okay, let's get a precept to get more understanding on why he asked Paul this question, or Saul at the time. Why he asked Saul, why persecutest thou me? Okay, let's take a look at this. So this is the book of Matthew, chapter 25 and verse 40. And it reads, it says, and the king shall answer and say unto them, verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. Okay, most of you are familiar with this parable that Yahushua gave in Matthew chapter 25. Okay, about those that visited him when he was in the hospital and prison and things like that, and those that didn't. Okay, just to give you a quick summary of that parable. Well, this is the answer. He said, and so much as ye have done it unto the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. Okay, this is the answer as to why he asked Saul, which is Paul, that rhetorical question. He said, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? Because whatever you've done to the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. Okay, this should give you more understanding about the church being the body of Yahushua. Okay, and the church being the children of Israel. Okay, not this multi-ethnic, people that claim to believe in the Messiah when they don't know what's going on. Okay, but that's the answer as to why Yahushua asked Saul that question. Okay, so now with that understanding, let's get back to Acts chapter 9 and let's continue with the story. Okay. All right, so picking up where we left off at, this is Acts chapter 9 and verse 7, and it reads, it says, and the men which journeyed with him stood speechless. Watch this. Hearing a voice, but seeing no man. Okay, so they basically experienced what Paul did. Okay, so they heard this voice. Remember, the light shined upon Saul, which is Paul. Okay, but there was no man there. Okay, so the two men that journeyed with him, they heard the same voice that Saul was hearing. They heard the conversation. They heard the voice, but they didn't see anyone. Okay, and this had to happen. Okay, because you got to understand how, for lack of a better term, how crazy this would have sounded if Paul didn't have any witnesses. Okay, just like today, there are many people that doubt Paul. They call him a false apostle, and they claim that he was lying about everything. It wouldn't have been any different back then when it actually happened. That's why he had to have two witnesses with him, and that's according to the law as well. Okay, let's put this on pause real quick, and let's go to Torah and let's actually read something. Okay, let's take a look at this. So this is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 19 and verse 15. And it reads, it says, one witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity or for any sin. in any sin that he sinneth. Now watch this. It says, at the mouth of 2 witnesses, or at the mouth of 3 witnesses, shall the matter be established. Okay, so you got to understand, at that time, it would have been easy for people to accuse Paul of basically lying about this situation. Okay, but they can't do that because he had 2 witnesses with him. Okay, that's why I said that it had to happen that way. Okay, there had to be 2 other people there to vouch for him. Okay, in this particular matter happening. Okay, so now he has these 2 witnesses to give him more credibility. Okay, this actually happened to me. Okay, on my road to Damascus. Okay, so now with that, let's go back to the story and pick back up where we stopped at. Okay, all right. So picking back up with the story, let's actually read verse 7 again. It says, and the men which journeyed with him stood speechless. Watch this. Hearing a voice, but seeing no man. Okay. So now let's look at the next verse, verse 8. It says, and Saul arose from the earth, and when his eyes were opened, he saw no man. So basically at that point, he was made blind. Okay, he was blind for a time. Okay, which we're going to read about when we get further into the story. But it continues. It says, but they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. Okay, so now let's continue. All right, so this is verse 9, and it reads, it says, and he was 3 days without sight, and neither did eat nor drink. Okay, so he was blind for 3 days, and during those 3 days he fasted. Okay, that's what a biblical fast is. A biblical fast is 24 hours, at the very least 24 hours of no food nor drink. Okay, so for those 3 days when he was without his sight, he fasted. He didn't eat or drink. Okay, so now let's move forward. This is verse 10, and it reads, it says, and there was a certain disciple at Damascus named Ananias. It says, and to him said the Lord in a vision, Ananias. And he said, behold, I am here, Lord. Okay, so now the Lord, Yahushua, is about to give a message or give instructions to Ananias about Saul, which soon he will become Paul. Okay, so now let's move forward and let's see how this conversation goes. Okay, so moving forward, this is verse 11, and it reads, it says, and the Lord said unto him, arise and go into the street which is called Straight, and inquire in the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarsus, for behold, he prayeth. Okay, so not to get too far off topic, but this should get us a little bit more information on what you should do during a fast. Okay, now remember, he fasted for 3 days. He didn't eat or drink, and it's also telling us that he prayed. Okay, so for any of you brothers or sisters that's considering going through a fast, okay, during that time, that's a time to actually pray, to really tap into the spirit. Okay, that's why it's called afflicting your soul. Okay, you're denying your flesh and putting more pressure on your soul. Okay, you're relying completely on the spirit. Okay, so during the fast, that's when you need to up the amount of prayers that you send up. Okay, but not to get too far off topic, right? But anyway, let's continue. This is verse 12, and it reads, it says, and hath seen in a vision a man named Ananias coming in, and putting his hand on him, that he might receive his sight. Okay, so the Lord The Lord had already gave Saul a vision about Ananias coming and basically healing him, and so he could receive his sight back. Okay, so Saul was already anticipating the arrival of Ananias. Okay, so now let's move forward to the next verse. All right, so moving forward, this is verse 13, and it reads. It says, Then Ananias answered, Lord, I have heard by many of this man how much evil he hath done to thy saints at Jerusalem. Okay, verse 14. It says, And here he hath authority from the chief priests to bind all that call on thy name. Okay, so you gotta understand the mind frame of Ananias hearing the instructions from Yahushua. Okay, going back to verse 10, it said that Ananias was a disciple of the Lord. Okay, he was a disciple. Okay, and we already read in verse 1 about what Saul was doing to the disciples of the Lord. Okay, so you have to understand Ananias's mindset. He's like, Lord, I already know what Saul has been doing to people like me that follow you. And now you asking me to go to Judas's house and actually heal this man. So he's confused right now. Okay? He's basically saying this man has the authority basically to imprison us and really put us to death. Have us put to death. All of us that call upon your name, that believe on you. Okay, so this is where Ananias is. Now let's see how Yahushua answers Ananias. Okay, let's look at the next verse. So this is verse 15, and it reads, it says, But the Lord said unto him, now watch this, Go thy way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me. Okay, so Paul was chosen or set apart for a specific purpose. He's a chosen vessel unto Yahushua and really unto the Father as well. Okay, for a specific purpose. Okay, remember the title of this video is The Apostle Paul. What was his job? We went through all this history to get to this point. Now we're really about to get into the lesson. I just wanted to give this history. Okay, but let's read that part again. It says, Go thy way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me. Okay, now watch this. It says, To bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. Now let's pause for a minute right here. Okay, because the colloquial Christians, which are the so-called Christians today, they'll read this verse and think they have an aha moment. Okay, because it separates Gentiles from the children of Israel here. It's still the same people. Okay, those Gentiles, in which we're gonna prove, of course, those Gentiles are Israelites. Okay, remember I mentioned Israelite foreigners. Okay, but this is not something new or a new concept really that Yahushua is speaking. Okay, you have to understand that we are scattered or dispersed among the Gentiles. Okay, so the Lord's name has to be declared amongst those Gentiles to basically fish out the Israelites that's among them. Okay, let's put this on pause real quick and let's take a look at this. Let's go to the book of Tobit. Okay, so moving forward, this is the book of Tobit, chapter 13 and verse 3. And it reads, now watch closely. Confess him before the Gentiles, ye children of Israel, for he hath scattered us among them. This sounds exactly like what Yahushua was saying. Okay, did he not say that Paul was to declare his name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel? The reason the Gentiles and the children of Israel is separated there, okay, is because it's the same people. It's talking about the same people, okay? We see here in the book of Tobit, again, it says, confess him before the Gentiles, ye children of Israel, for he hath scattered us among them. Among who? Among the Gentiles, okay? Going back to Acts chapter 9, that's why Yahweh's name has to be declared amongst the Gentiles, okay? To fish out the Israelites that's scattered among them. Okay, it's not really a hard concept to grasp. Okay, but that's what that's going into. Okay, so now let's go back to the book of Acts. Okay, and let's finish that out. All right. So this is Acts chapter 9, and let's start at the top of verse 15 again. And it reads, it says, but the Lord said unto him, go thy way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me, to bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. Now look closely at verse 16, and it reads, for I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake. And when you go through the story of the Apostle Paul, for any of you who are familiar, you know that he did indeed suffer for the Lord's name's sake. Okay, it's really a beautiful story, the story of the Apostle Paul. In fact, when you read the end of, I want to say it's Romans chapter 8, Paul starts listing all the things that should never separate us from the love of Yahushua, that should never separate us from him. And when you look at that list, most of that stuff that he listed, Paul went through. But the point is, out of all those things, it never separated him from Yahushua. Okay? He fought the good fight of faith. Okay? He quote unquote finished the race, so to speak. He fulfilled what he was ordained to do. Okay? But again, this is going into the topic of the video. What was his job? Okay, was it truly for a multi-ethnic people, or was it for the same people that the Bible talks about from Genesis to Revelation, which are the children of Israel? Okay, so let's get into it. I'm not gonna make this too long. Okay, we're really gonna be dealing with different things in the book of Romans. Okay, but you can actually prove who Paul was sent to deal with really in all the epistles. Okay, there's different things that let you know who he was sent for in all the epistles, all 13 of them. Okay, but without further ado, let's actually get into it. Okay, let's go to the book of Romans and let's look at a few things. Okay, so this is the book of Romans, chapter 11 and verse 13, and it reads, it says, for I speak to you Gentiles, we'll get to that in a minute. Now watch closely. In as much as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify mine office. Now let's pause right here for a minute. What exactly did Paul mean when he said, I magnify mine office? Okay, what does it mean to magnify something? Okay, to magnify something means to give praise to something or to glorify it. Okay, the same way you have scriptures that talks about how we are supposed to magnify the Lord. Okay, so he's saying, I magnify mine office. Now, what is an office? Okay, an office is the job or the service that you're appointed to do. Okay, for example, right now, Sleepy Joe Biden, he has the office of presidency. Okay? It makes more sense. So now, with Paul saying, I magnify mine office, he's praising or glorifying the job or service that he was appointed to do. Okay? And in the very next verse, he's about to tell us what his office is. That's the point. Okay? So now, let's go to verse 14 and find out what his office is that he's magnifying. Okay? Let's read. Verse 14 says, if by any means I may provoke to emulation, or for, in other words, jealousy, watch this, them which are my flesh. Okay, now watch this. And might save some of them. This is Paul's office. Yes, he's an apostle of the Gentiles. But who are these Gentiles? Okay, who are these people? Okay, it says, them which are my flesh. Okay, that I might save some of them. Okay, now it would behoove us to find out who are those that are Paul's flesh, because that's who he's concerned about saving. Remember, he said, I magnify mine office. Okay, so now we're going to stay right here in the book of Romans, and we're going to go back 2 chapters. We're going to go to chapter 9, and we're going to find out who are these people that are Paul's flesh, because that's who he's concerned. That's who he's concerned about as far as saving them. Okay, let's go to chapter 9. Let's take a look at this. Okay, so this is Romans chapter 9, and we're going to start at verse 3. We're going to get right to the point. And it reads, it says, for I could wish that myself were accursed from Christ. Now watch closely. For my brethren, my kinsmen, according to the flesh. This is the answer we're looking for. So those that are his flesh are his brethren and his kinsmen. Okay, and if that's not clear enough, let's look at the beginning of verse 4. It's just continuing. It's continuing verse 3. It says, who are Israelites? Those are the people that are his flesh, that he's concerned about saving, that we read about in Romans chapter 11, when he said, I magnify mine office. Okay, those are Israelites. Okay, because in case you didn't know, Paul himself is an Israelite, okay, of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin, when you look at going back to Romans chapter 11 and the first verse. He's an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. That's Paul. Okay. But anyway, let's continue. Let's for the heck of it, let's read about everything that belongs to the Israelites. And it continues. It says, to whom pertaineth or belongs to the adoption. Okay, so your colloquial Christians will talk about how all people can be adopted into the family of God and all of this. Well, the adoption belongs to the Israelites. And that should let you know at one point of time that they left from the Most High and lost their identity. Okay, they weren't known as Israelites at some point, so they got to be adopted back to him. Okay, then it goes on to say, and the glory and the covenants, okay, both old and new, is pertaining to the Israelites, not all people. Okay, and the giving of the law. We know the law was only given to the children of Israel. Okay, what is that? Psalms 147 verses 19 and 20. The law was only given to the children of Israel. Okay. It says, and the service of God. So the only people that can be proclaimed as priests, that can do the ministry, are the children of Israel. So any of you so-called pastors and priests that are not an Israelite, okay, you can't do that. The service of God is only for the children of Israel. Okay, the priesthood. Okay. It says, and the promises. Okay. A lot of these quote unquote colloquial Christians, they want to hold on to the promises that was promised to Abraham, that was passed down. Okay, but that's for the children of Israel only. Okay. So let's move forward. Verse 5. It says, whose are the fathers? It's talking about the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay. It says, and of whom, as concerning the flesh, Christ came. He came for the children of Israel. That's the whole purpose of him coming to the earth, being born from Joseph and Mary. It was for the children of Israel. That's why he came to the earth and he died. That's what you're reading right now. Okay? It says, who is over all? Remember, the topic is still the children of Israel. It says, who is over all? The children of Israel are still over all. That's Deuteronomy 7:6. We are above all people that are upon the face of the earth. Okay. And it says, God blessed forever. Amen. Or so be it. We are the ones that's blessed by the Most High Yahweh forever. Not everybody. Okay. So now that we've established that, okay, we've established who are those that are Paul's flesh. We've established that. And remember, going back, he said, I magnify mine office. This is the job that he was appointed to do. Okay. In fact, since we've established this, let's go back real quick. Let's go back to what we were reading in Romans chapter 11. Okay. So going back, this is Romans chapter 11. And let's start at the top of verse 13 again. Okay. And it reads, it says, for I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles. I magnify mine office. Now, again, we already established what this office is. Okay, let's look at the next verse. If by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are my flesh, and might save some of them. And we just established who are those that are Paul's flesh in the 9th chapter of Romans. Okay. It is the Israelites. Okay. And we read everything that pertains to the Israelites. Okay. There should be no disputation about that. Okay. So now let's go back up to the top of verse 13 again. Okay. Because I said we're going to deal with this. It says, for I speak to you Gentiles. Right. So there's no denying that this particular letter, the letter up to the Romans, that these are Gentiles that are in Rome that he's writing to. Okay, because he said, for I speak to you Gentiles. So he's writing to Gentiles in Rome. Okay, there's no disputation there. Okay, but who are these Gentiles? Okay. Because one could try and make the argument that he's telling non-Israelites that, you know, he still wants to save some of his people, even though his ministry is to the Gentile. People can try and twist and make that argument. So now we want to really hammer home that these Gentiles that he's writing to are indeed Israelites as well. Okay, so we're going to get this across the board. Okay, so let's go to the beginning of the letter. Okay, let's go to Romans chapter 1 and let's take a look at something. Okay, so moving forward, this is Romans chapter 1, and we're going to start at verse 1. Okay, now before we even begin, right, when dealing with a letter, okay, we really should have learned this in elementary school. Okay, when dealing with a letter, when you're writing a letter, most of the time, the audience that you're writing to, 9 times out of 10 is usually listed somewhere in the beginning of the letter. Let you know who the audience is that you're writing to. For example, in most letters today, you would say, "Dear such and such." Okay, so the audience is pointed out somewhere in the beginning of the letter. Okay, we learned this in elementary school. Okay, so now we're going to go to the beginning of the letter, and we're going to see if somewhere in the beginning of the letter does Paul give us what's known as context clues as to whom he's writing to. Okay, so let's start here. Let's look at verse 1, and it reads, it says, "Paul, a servant of Jesus Christ," or Yahawashi HaMashiach. It says, "called to be an apostle, separated unto the gospel of God." Now, we when reading this, we already read about this in Acts chapter 9. That's why I went there. Okay, I didn't read that history just to be reading it. Okay, he said, Paul, a servant of Yahawashi, called to be an apostle. We read about that calling on his road to Damascus, and he had 2 witnesses with him. Okay, it says separated unto the gospel of God. What did he tell Ananias? He said he is a chosen vessel unto me. So when Paul said this in the beginning of Romans chapter 1, he's not lying. We read about it already. Okay, so now look at how verse 1 ended. It says separated unto the gospel of God. What is the gospel? Okay, because this is what he was declaring. Now watch this. Verse 2 is going to let us know what this gospel is. It says, which he had promised afore by his prophets in the Holy Scriptures. So whatever this gospel is that Paul was separated unto, it's the gospel that was promised aforetime by his prophets. That means this gospel was already talked about in the quote-unquote so-called Old Testament. Okay, and guess what? It's going all the way back to Isaiah chapter 61. Okay, where he was appointed to preach glad tidings or good tidings. Okay, in other words, that's the good news, the gospel. This is what Isaiah was anointed or appointed to do. But when you continue to read that particular gospel was to those that mourn in Zion. Zion represents what? The children of Israel. This is the gospel, the same gospel that Paul was separated unto, or was separated to declare. Okay? Same gospel. Okay, so now let's move forward. Let's actually jump down to verse 4 and let's take a look at something. Okay? And actually it's going to be verse 7 that I'm looking for. Okay, let's take a look at verse 7. And it reads, it says, to all that be in Rome Okay, so now, again, we're still in the beginning of the letter. And now he's telling us the audience that he's writing to. Again, this is what we learn in elementary school about how to write a letter. Like I said, the audience is usually listed in somewhere in the beginning of the letter. Okay? And what do we also learn about in elementary school? We learn about context clues. Okay? These so-called colloquial Christians try to ridicule us and say we cherry pick scriptures and all this other stuff. Well, no. In elementary school, you learn about something called context clues. Okay, and that's simply what we do. This is a context clue, letting us know or giving us the context about the audience that he's writing to. That's what we're about to get into here. Okay, so again, at the top of verse 7 again, it says, to all that be in Rome, now watch closely, beloved of God. Let's pause. Okay, who are the only people in the Bible that's referred to as the beloved of God? Okay, it's the children of Israel. Now, we don't have to go to it because I don't want this video to be too long, so I'm going to reference it for you. Okay, when you go into the Apocrypha, I believe it's Baruch chapter 3, round about verse 36. It lets you know that Israel is the beloved of God. Okay, that's who this is about. It's still the children of Israel. Then it goes on to say what? Called to be saints. Who are the people that are saints in the Bible? It's the children of Israel. This goes back to Psalms chapter 50 and verse 5. Okay, the people that are saints are those that made a covenant with the Most High by sacrifice. Okay, those are the children of Israel. Okay, even when you get into the Hebrew language, when you look at the word saint, okay, it's the same Hebrew word for the word holy, which is Quadash. Those two words, saints and holy, are interchangeable. It's the same Hebrew word, which is Quadash. Saint simply means holy or set apart. Who are the people that are called holy in the Bible? It's the children of Israel. That's Deuteronomy 7 and 6. And I believe it's also Deuteronomy 14, and I want to say verse 2, if my memory serves me correctly. The children of Israel are called holy, which is the same word for saint in Hebrew, which is Quadash. Okay? So again, these are context clues as to whom these Gentiles are that Paul's writing to, that's in Rome. Okay? It says, grace to you and peace from God, our Father, a possessive pronoun, our Father. Okay, because remember, Paul himself is an Israelite from the tribe of Benjamin. So he said, God, our Father, because the people he's writing to happen to be Israelites as well, that are known as Gentiles. Okay, they have this Gentile state of mind. They've lived amongst Gentiles so long that they've taken on their customs and their identity. Okay, it's really not that deep, but that's what's going on. Okay, it says, I'm going to read that again. Grace to you and peace from God, our Father, and the Lord Jesus Christ, or Yahweh Shai HaMashiach. Okay, so again, this is simply more evidence as to the people that Paul was dealing with. Remember, going back to Romans, the 11th chapter, he said, I magnify mine office. Okay, he's glorifying or praising the job or service that he was appointed to do. And it's only to the children of Israel. Okay, it's just that those particular Israelites, remember, he's the apostle of the uncircumcision. Okay, those particular Israelites, they were known as Gentiles. Okay, it's really not that deep. Okay, but again, you have the so-called Christians, because we were in Romans chapter 11. The so-called Christians, they'll say, well, what about the wild olive tree and the olive tree? Those are two listen, they don't know what's going on. Okay, when dealing with that parable, even though it says one, you have the natural olive tree, then you have the wild olive tree. At the end of the day, they're both olive trees. It's the same type of tree. Okay, meaning it's the same people. They come from the same family tree. Okay, this whole concept that you have in the world of a family tree, that's really biblical. Okay, they come from the same family tree. Okay, the only people in the Bible that's referred to as an olive tree, this goes back, I want to say it's in the book of Jeremiah. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But the children of Israel are referred to as a green olive tree. Okay, a green olive tree is a tree that's healthy. Okay, at one point in time when we were in our right mind state. Okay, both the northern and southern kingdom were referred to as a green olive tree. Okay, this is why Paul even used that parable. Okay, even when you read at the conclusion of the parable, when you read, I want to say Romans 11:26, is that so all Israel shall be saved. No, he didn't say all people. He said all Israel shall be saved, because that's who he's dealing with. Okay, that whole parable about the olive tree, it is parallel to the parable of the prodigal son that you read about, I want to say, in the book of Luke. Okay, one son remained and one went off and lived a riotous life like the heathen. Okay, it's the same concept as the parable of the olive tree in Romans the 11th chapter. Okay, but anyway, I believe this is actually a good place to end the video. And again, the title of the video is The Apostle Paul. What was his job? Okay, so we basically ran through a little bit of history about Paul and his calling. Okay, then we went into the book of Romans to actually get certain points proving, what his job was. Remember, he said, I magnify mine office, and that's to those that are his flesh. Okay, now we dealt with the book of Romans, looking up different context clues, showing what his job was. And even, despite all the context clues we actually went to, we still really didn't even scratch the surface. It's really so many other verses in the book of Romans alone to still prove that he was only dealing with Israelites, that's who those Gentiles were. Okay, we barely scratched the surface. It's just that, this video is getting kind of long. Okay, but maybe at some point, if the Lord puts the spirit on me, I'll do a part 2 of this. But we barely scratched the surface. Okay, but yeah, those Gentiles that Paul, was dealing with were indeed Israelites. Okay, there's really shouldn't be any dispute of that. But, you're still going to have people that are naysayers, and that's okay. Okay, we'll still see in the end who was right and who was wrong. Okay. But anyway, with that, and as always, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High Yahweh, which is the name of the Heavenly Father, and I do so by Hashem, which means in the name of Yahweh Shai, which is the name of the only begotten Son of the Heavenly Father, whom the world knows as Jesus Christ. And I want to thank all you brothers and sisters for tuning in. I hope this video was informative and edifying. And until next time, Shalom, family.